Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity news for growth stage companies, their management teams, and investors. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, and we're all coming back online here after either Indigenous Peoples Day, the Columbus Day here in the United States, or Thanksgiving in Canada, both of which were worth celebrating this year for sure. And we are coming back to, surprising nobody, more breach news. But I want to take a little bit of a closer look at the particular case in this week's story and think about how we might learn a few maybe more nuanced lessons from the event. So last week, late towards the end, news broke of an incident at Fidelity Investments, one of the world's largest asset managers, that confirmed that over 77,000 customers had personal information compromised during an August data breach, including social security numbers and driver's licenses. To give you a sense of their size, Fidelity has about 14 trillion, give or take a few hundred billion, in assets under management. Yes, that's trillion with a T. So we're not talking about a small fish here by any stretch of the imagination. And the incident that caused the breach is per usual, light on details. In fact, the sample breach notification letter that Fidelity provided noted only that, quote, between August 17 and August 19, a third party accessed and obtained certain information without authorization using two customer accounts that they had recently established. We detected this activity on August 19th and immediately took steps to terminate the access, unquote. So unfortunately, there aren't any additional details available either in the letter or on Fidelity's site. So we really don't know much about what happened. And actually, if it weren't for the few state laws requiring notifications, Maine in this case being the one that's driving the sample letter and the other pieces, as well as both Massachusetts and New Hampshire, we likely would have never heard about this incident at all, which I think is unfortunate on a number of levels. First, we've seen this continued trend of companies denying they've had an incident or a breach until the threat actors post their data on the ransomware sites or they have to make a regulatory filing. The latest in this trend is actually Japanese company Casio, who did this exact same deny until you can't move just yesterday on the 14th of October. And there are a couple of things about this move that I really don't like. The first is I don't like when people or companies are dishonest, obfuscate, or hide. I understand why. I can imagine the appeal in those situations when you're under duress, but I still don't like it. But the other reason, and maybe the bigger reason why I don't like it, is that it encourages threat actors to continue this trend of naming and shaming their victims and using that as another extortion lever, leaving all of the power and the control of this dynamic with the threat actors. It really does feel to me like Fidelity is falling into the same trap here, which is the trap of trying to hide the event, only notifying when absolutely necessary, and then offering as few details as possible. I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to air every little piece of dirty laundry or that you need to kind of run with all of your incidents in public, but I do think there's an alternative universe here where Fidelity chooses to drive this story forward on their own terms as a success story. Perhaps these threat actors were able to, for whatever reason, through a vulnerability or through a weakness in their application, exploit that within their systems and create these two accounts. But then Fidelity, within 2 days, was able to catch the attackers. The number of users that were impacted is relatively small for an organization of Fidelity's size, and there were no financial transactions that took place as a result of this attack. I think you could go so far as to turn this into a talk track on the security conference circuit for a year from the Fidelity security team and detail how we were able to be resilient in the face of this. And even though we had a failure of a security control or a breach in this portion of our enterprise, here's all the other things that were in place that worked, that helped minimize the damage and drive us forward with a reasonable amount of impact for the event. I think there's a real opportunity here where they can turn this into a win and demonstrate that defense in depth and a diversity of defense across an enterprise like this really does work, even when, maybe especially when, a control fails. But instead, we're back to this game of hiding and minimizing, which doesn't help anyone get better, and it continues to allow the threat actors to have the upper hand in both the psychological and, in many ways, the tactical arena of this game. And I just don't understand why we do that. So as you think about how you might handle these sort of situations in your own organizations moving forward, I would encourage all of us to step up to the realities in which we find ourselves and think about what that transparency, what that messaging, what that engagement could be like, rather than falling back on this wishful thinking in these hard moments. From a fundraising perspective, we can't have every week be a $20 billion week. So we did have a bit of a reality check last week, taking a tally of just over $5 billion of newly committed capital in a handful of funds. Perhaps it was just heading into the holiday weekend, or there was something else going on, but I wouldn't read too much into it. Even just today, we're already ahead of that number for this week in terms of newly committed capital announcements. So things are continuing to indicate a strong October, again, halfway through today, and then into the election and the close of the year. So although we're down to single digits in terms of the billions this week, I think overall we're in a strong position. With that, a reminder that you can find all of the stories that we talked about and the articles in the comment section below. You can find back issues and written transcripts for these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.